Thank you, Caitlin and Sam Quigley at Lyman Allyn. Such an important cultural landmark for us in Connecticut. And obviously, the coronavirus situation has prohibited us from being live. I wish we were all together sitting in a space together up at the Lyman Allyn. I wish Melissa could be sitting across. I've interviewed her live several times. But let's, for all of us on screen, I'd like to make this an informative and casual conversation. I think the benefit of this format virtually is that we're going to be able to look at in detail at some of her marvelous art that is on display. Of course, it's like strawberry Twizzlers or strawberry chewing gum. It's not a real strawberry. We're going to be looking at art on a screen, but the opportunity to have the artists with us commenting and allowing us to maybe dip a little bit into her imagination. We'll do a little deep dive into what's going on right there. Melissa often talks about her critical moment in her art seems to be somewhere between she's furiously painting, and you should see Melissa Barbieri in her studio. It's physical. It's a choreography. I think some of you know that old movie with Pollock painting out on his back terrace out in Springs. And you know, I've seen Melissa painting. I've watched her paint, and this lady is all in. She's all in, and I hope that in the next hour together, we can just pierce, just slightly go subliminally, just below the consciousness, just to get a better idea to Melissa, what are all these paintings about? All right, Melissa, tell us, first of all, tell us. I'm gonna go to a slide share, but I'm gonna prompt Melissa while I'm doing that. So don't pay attention to the screen. We'll listen to Melissa and watch her. Melissa, you've been painting your entire life. You've been drawing and painting since you were a teenage girl here in Fairfield, Connecticut. And I remember the joy and the sense of gratification when the folks at the Lyman Allyn, I remember you telling me, I think this has to go back maybe a year or so, I'm going to have this show, Philip, at the Lyman Allyn, and I really want it to be good, and I really want to show my best. And I'd ask you at this point in your career, you're not a young painter, and you're certainly not ready for the home for the aged for the painters. You're floating along in mid-career. So while I go into the slide share with our friends on screen, what did it mean to you to get this, first of all, the invitation, very prestigious museum invitation, and then the process of the last year gearing up for this event? Okay, go ahead. And I'm gonna go on to the slides. Go ahead.
Okay, well, first of all, I'd like to thank the Lyman Allyn for mounting this show. I'm very, very honored to be there in a beautiful museum with the collection they have. I'd like to thank Sam Quigley and Philip Yu for moderating this talk. It's very nice. I too wish we were in a room with people and tubs of champagne like a usual opening, but I guess at this time that's not possible. So I would say what it meant to me, it meant a lot to me to be asked to put together a show for the Lyman Allyn, because I've been working furiously for years on different series of paintings, and I do work in different genres. I have different interests in the artistic spectrum, but this latest series I began maybe 2 years ago, and that's the body of work that I'm showing now at the Lyman Allyn. Um, I'm a painter that paints in oils primarily, although I've worked in fresco and different mediums, but oil is my first love. And so this is the first series I put together where I started using paper, heavy, beautiful watercolor paper from France, very deckled and textured. And I've been using India ink and watercolor and creating these large things, 4 to 6 feet long, that I'm calling memories, dreams, and archetypes. So to me, because it's so different than my other work, although it relates, the look of it, because it's on paper and not linen or canvas, is different. The medium I'm using is different, and the technique that I'm using to paint these with is something new to me in the last 2 years. And when I say I'm addicted to it, I have a very compulsive personality, which I think makes for probably a more successful artist if you're more compulsive and obsessive and you just want to get in there and work. And that's what I found with these. So I've created about 17 of these so far. And I believe there's at least 14 or 15 in the Lyman Allyn right now. So I'm very excited about the show.
All right. So you talked about how you are using inks and in a new way. This really is a new phase. And then came that moment, quote, I I knocked a pot of ink all over the paper. All right. So what happened from there? This academically Beaux-Arts trained master of realist art, and what happened when you knocked over that ink jar?
Well, that was my very first piece in this series, and it's in the Lyman Allyn. I called it at the end. I picked out the title, and I'm calling it "How the West Was Won." And I was out in New Mexico in the desert where
I think we can go there. Hold on. Let's.
Yeah.
All right. No. All right. I'll stay with this one. Go ahead. We'll go back.
That's it. That's it right there.
That's it. Okay. Hang on.
So I keep journals and notebooks very loosely, not like my day-to-day things, but say when I'm traveling or even at home reading books or thinking of things. I take a lot of notes. I write different things, quotes and phrases and things I thought of, things I've read. And I had written this thing in my journal with all these little notes and scratches and uh, kind of this stream of consciousness impressionist piece with just very visual kinds of writing. So sometimes when I come up to my studio and I'm not really inspired and nothing is really working for me, to kind of loosen up my hands and make my mind kind of empty, I will take a marker or a pen and do some calligraphy or handwriting. I love to print and I love to write in cursive on letters and cards. So I decided, I took out my journals, and there was something, big long thing I had written about this feeling I had when I was out in New Mexico. So I took out this big roll, 15 feet long, of this watercolor paper that I had just ordered because I was thinking of something to do with it. And I unrolled it on my studio floor. And just for fun, I got out a pen and ink, India ink, and I dipped the pen in the ink and I started writing in this beautiful font, I thought. And I started writing it curved and kind of undulating all through. And as I started creating it, something kind of clicked in my mind, and I said, this looks really beautiful. And I stood up and I stood back and I said, I'm going to put an image down. And it was this centerpiece with it's like a figure, and there's a wolf or a fox, there's a horse, and there's a ring of fire. And all these things mean something to me. And I'm not going to say I know exactly what they do mean, but they're definitely something in my subconscious. So I became completely obsessed with this piece one night, and I probably worked till about 3 a.m. I was dipping the pen nib into the India ink and writing, and I mean, hours and hours. And about, I don't know, 6 hours into it, I kicked over a bottle of paint. I work on the floor with these things because they're so large. And it was just a horrifying feeling. It was that black blotch down under the center dark spot. And I really, I don't know, I stood up and it's so typical of me because when I work, I get frenetic. So I said, I'm not stopping. I'm not starting over. This took so long. So I just knelt back down and started working. And by and by, I just loved how it looked. And it probably took me about 3 weeks of working every single night. And when it was done, I was very happy. And that was my first piece.
So we're not to think that this is some type of Rorschach test, a Rorschach image, or that let's go to the title of the show, Memories, Dreams, and Archetypes, a reference to the great work of the great Swiss psychoanalyst, Dr. Carl Jung.
Yes.
And Jung writes so poetically about that in his own work, the Red Book, he talks about that the art becomes almost a map of the psyche. So
Yeah.
how the West was won, take us through the map of your psyche then.
Well, I don't like to really ascribe too much meaning to anything I do because I can't, especially with this series, I can't really say that I actually know what it's all about, but I think it means something different to everyone that looks at it. But what I can tell you is that to me, it's an emptying out of my subconscious mind because when I'm working on these pieces, as opposed to my other pieces, my more representational art, my oil paintings, where I know with them when I begin a painting pretty much what I want it to look like from A
Let's
to
go
Z.
there. Let's go there, Melissa. Let's go here. Let's go here. This was
Yeah,
Melissa's
that's
figurative, very strongly inspired by artists who I know you love, John Curran, for example, and Hockney, artists you love. Let's talk about the figurative stage of your career.
well, I love I love that type of painting. It's very tight. It's very classical. This is a series called Gods and Mortals, and this is a life-size painting along with the other Lord Byron painting that you have on your PowerPoint.
There it is.
And I love these two paintings, and they're life-size, and they're very beautiful to me and very enjoyable to paint. But they're work because they're so tight. There's no like feeling. There's no. You're putting your emotion in it, but it's controlled emotion.
Mhm.
So that's what these.
Tell us a little bit about why in this period, a few years back, you've always had this passion for reading. What I love the way you call it. You say, I like to read dead authors. I like dead authors. Talk to us about these dead authors.
Yeah, I don't know why, but I don't really read very much contemporary uh, literature, novels, or anything. I can't seem to get away from the classics, and I love like the biographies of the writers, the artists from, everyone as modern as Philip Roth, back through Sylvia Plath, and back to the English Romantic poets, the novelists, the French symbolists, poets. I don't know why that always has fired my imagination. So it's everything is kind of a link to the past with me, but
Okay.
I think the past I think we are actually in this time that we live in linked to the past more than we know. Um, I know when I'm painting at my most optimum level, I rarely turn on the television. And I honestly don't think I watched a TV show besides hardly even the news for 3 years. I had no idea what was going on in the world. So I was so prodigious with what I was, the output. Unfortunately, last few months I got caught up in the election, and my output has never been lower. But that's only because of the coronavirus and everything else. I'm I'm emptying my mind again, so I'm getting back into it. And this is the only time in my life I've taken a little tiny hiatus, but there were extenuating circumstances for that. Um, but definitely there's a link to things in the past and things in the unconscious, but I think those are totally relevant to what I'm feeling today. I
Okay.
think I'm more aware of that.
Uh, I'm going to go here to you. This is a wonderful image of, the hand, the touch, the calligraphy, and it's flowing out of you. It seems to be, almost part of your subliminal consciousness. So Federico Fellini, that wonderful Italian master film director whose films we've enjoyed so much over the years, I remember Fellini saying that all art is autobiographical. And I wonder then, in this moment, looking backwards in retrospect, mid-career, where is we'll call it the autobiographical? What are we learning about your journey, your life, as you're projecting through with literally at the tip of your fingerprint, and it flows out into this other world?
Well, I don't really know. It's something that is not this series definitely is not a planned out series. In other words, I have a list of titles slash ideas that I want to put down, and these are things that are just in my mind. Like when I go to sleep every night, I'm thinking of the next painting or the next three paintings, and I'm putting all these thoughts together in my head. So when I'm not, I think technology really gets in the way of my particular kind of art and creativity. So I really don't subscribe to anything that current, except where technology somewhat is not involved. It's more silence and more inward, like looking inward and philosophical questions, maybe what's been happening over the centuries in the world, like a thin wire running to where we are now. And it's a lot of what I've read and things that I've read and I've thought about in my head, dreams I've had, memories from being a little girl, memories from my past, thinking of my ancestors and the whole lineage of art history. So I have all these things floating in my head that I'm thinking of every night when I drift off to sleep. And it's kind of just fragments and impressions. And then they're all kind of put together on these pieces of art. And they sometimes don't seem like they would go together, but in my mind, they do.
You really enjoy, and I've seen this in some of the drawings, but you love this zone of this subliminal area. You often say, I'm at my best just before falling asleep. You're somewhere in the conscious and then going into this meditation in this other state. And yet you say, now do you write down? Do you have a little journal book next to your nightstand? Tell us about the way you are able to evoke these fragments that are always out there?
Yes, I have a journal, and I wish had a journal where I documented a little bit from every single day and I could look back, but I'm not disciplined like that. But I do have a journal. I actually have several journals, and I'm not good with starting in the beginning and filling it all up. So unfortunately, I have different ones here and there, so they're all not in order, but it might have a quote, a half quote, a paragraph from a book. It might have a poem I wrote. It might just have a word. It might have some sketches with arrows and dots. And then later, or even years later, I can look through all these pages and be grabbed by something and say, "Oh, that's what I'm going to
Okay.
use this."
I want to go out to the desert. I want to go out to New Mexico. Let's go here out into New Mexico and to the plateaus and to the smell of the juniper trees. So that was a very pivotal experience. I believe you and Michael were out there. What was it, 3 years ago when you did the New Mexico
No, I
experience?
mean, I've gone out for 25 years. I go as often as
Okay.
I can, all over the West, but specifically New Mexico. My brother and sister live there, and I just love the freedom of the West. I've been obsessed with the West since I was a little girl, and I used to go down to my great grandmother. She was from Italy, but they lived on a farm in Fairfield, and going down to their house as a little girl in elementary school, they would always have the westerns on, black and white westerns on TV, at 3 o'clock. So after school, I'd go down there. But cowboys and Indians, for some reason, completely always fascinated me. And I remember a few years ago, I asked my father why my great grandmother from Italy and my great aunt were so obsessed with these westerns. And he said, I don't really know, but these seems like Europeans were always really drawn to, the romance of the American West. So to me, it was always a shame that I didn't live back then, and I've always been drawn to it. So
Mhm.
this piece here, this particular piece, it's not it's not like I know everything about every tribe or Indian tribe or indigenous people, but very respectfully, I am in awe of their spirituality and their plight. And this was inspired by the spirituality and the dancing, the frenetic dancing that the shaman did and the tribe did, whether it was like the sun dance or the ghost dance. And
Mhm.
it's something that I think you can still tap into today. That our culture has really sadly lost so much spirituality. I think a lot of my paintings are about spirituality in different realms, whether it's Catholicism, Christianity, uh, indigenous cultures, Native Americans, Buddhism, all of it. It fascinates me. That's a big part of what I have tried to paint.
Okay, let's talk about the Luna Mystica. Let me share with our listeners tonight. Let me share that earlier today I was with my class, my American art class. I'm teaching a winter intercession seminar. Young students uh, being locked up, obviously under sheltering and everyone at home. So it's a pleasure to teach during the winter intercession, and we had a lot of fun this morning, Melissa, because
Yeah.
we looked at this, and I asked the students on the chat to give a phrase or an expression of what this meant to each student. What look at it on the chat. They each wrote down um, what they felt was being communicated, what the meaning or the purpose of this was, or what it's supposed to be about. And of course, as an artist, it doesn't need to be about anything. But we went down, we did a kind of down the rabbit hole, and the students were wonderful. They were talking about divinity and the power of women and nature. Melissa, what do you remember from that conversation, the interaction with the students today?
Oh, it was wonderful. I think when you first asked them to each write a word or a phrase that related to the painting, and there was a hesitation, I said to them, "There's really no wrong answer because I don't even know specifically what each thing means. I'm just kind of executing it and looking at it like everyone else a day or two later. So I don't really know literally what each and every one means, but I think they could mean something different to everyone. And that was shown today. Somebody said strength, somebody said dreams. It was really interesting. I like that everyone takes away something, whether it's something that grabs them, a word, a phrase, a feeling, an image, that
Mhm.
kind of thing.
Just in terms of a formal analysis, a formal commentary, if we were trying to deconstruct this image, it it blends, it has a melding of very strong abstract elements, very strong. The composition itself seems to be floating, and yet it brings us in with your ability of naturalistic rendering. Where do you go to the edge of this, Melissa? This is, let me show you. This is obviously such a wonderful figure, this transcendent figure, this earth goddess, this Luna Mystica. And then, tell me how in your mind, at least give us walk us through how you're walking through how this emerges, how the entire composition comes together. Can you open that up for us a bit?
I can sort of, yes. This piece, I had the title, which it has a funny story to it, but it has a personal meaning to me. But I love the sound Luna Mystica, of course, evoking the moon, mysticism, and maybe poetry and things like that. So Luna Mystica.
So this became like a mantra. You love it started with the words.
Yeah, but the funny part is, I really wouldn't normally say this, but it's an Airstream
It's
trailer.
okay. You only have 300 people listening. It's okay.
I know.
We're trying to tap into your consciousness. Go ahead.
It's an Airstream trailer park called Luna Mystica, and I love the name. And I said that's got to be a title. So it's something out west that I've been to, and I loved it because the moon, mysticism, that kind of taps into everything that I love anyway. Not that you would know that, but that's where that term came in my mind. So it has some words from the poem Howl by Allen Ginsberg. It's not the poem, it's just words picked out of his poem in that swirl. And it has some mystical references in there in the text. And I wanted to do the wolves howling because I was staying out on the mesa camping with my husband, and we heard these wolves very, very close to where we were. And to me, that was evoking the Wild West that I so want to be real. I know it's vanishing, but where I try to go, it's real and it's empty. And at night, it's authentic, coming from the East Coast, it's full of romance for me. So those howling wolves and the mystic moon and the beautiful feminine figure, and she has all these gold, I don't know, glitterati falling from her fingertips, and then the lightning bolts and the zodiac references to Cancer, which is my sign, and things like that. So it all blended together, and there's a quote by Carl Jung in there that it just kind of all went together in my mind.
Okay, well, okay, let me go a little bit ahead here. This had a sort of a Mediterranean feel to it, right?
Yeah, that's
archipelago. Let's talk about archipelago.
Well, I love the ocean, and that's been a focus of my work in a lot of ways. And this was the centerpiece is a fresco that I love. I thought it was Pompeii, and you said today it was Crete.
Yes, this is from the palace at Knossos.
Yeah, that central figure, the fisherman boy.
Yeah, the original of this would have been painted about 1600 BC.
Yeah, so I love that figure, the simplicity, the stance, everything. So I wanted to do a painting called Archipelago because I think it's such a beautiful word, and that was what I was going to title it, which I did. And I wanted to use that image, and then the other things just kind of all were fit like a puzzle around it, just had that look to me. I don't know. I don't really know when I do these where it's going to go. I had the title and I had that central image, and then everything else just came to me over the period, 3 weeks, little of this, little of that.
Okay,
and
let's.
Yeah, it's done. And you don't even know why it's done. You just think, well, it's done.
Well, here we're deep into native mythology, and you're somewhere between the the Old West and pre-contact West, and then what is 1973? What was that? Maybe a native people's protest at Standing Rock or something. Well, why 1973 and a peace sign?
That was for me. It was something from Wounded Knee, but also I was alive then. I was a little girl. I don't know why. I knew I wanted to put something there, and that just came to me. So there's probably different reasons for that. Um, that was in the middle of a trip out to Arizona, and I was also reading at the time several biographies and nonfiction books on the settling of the American West and the Indian Wars and Black Elk and Kit Carson and Quanah from the Comanches, all these American Indian references, Native American and modern day warfare. It's about war. There's a lot of things about war and what it's about and what it stands for.
Give us the title of this again, please.
I call that Thunderbird, and the images, there's two images, main images. That's the Thunderbird was the god, the of the air, and the opposite of the Thunderbird was they called the underwater panther, and that was the image from under the earth's surface, under the water in the lakes and the rivers.
Okay, I see the cryptic references to mountain howitzers and Indian wars, and then you put this little coda in, maybe 1973 style, from Robert Duvall in Francis Ford Coppola's Apocalypse Now. Duvall, after the attack on the village in Vietnam, I love the smell of napalm in the morning. Rather oblique reference there, but connected to the composition. Here we're moving even more into the centrality of the native and remnants and artifacts, and give us an idea of what we're looking at here with these dried bones you found somewhere.
Yeah, these are just references from I have a big collection. I'm always collecting things when I'm traveling, from the dirt, the woods here and there. Certain things I buy, certain things I find. Those antlers, I found one of those in our yard up here in Essex, out on our property. The bones in the lower right, something I found. We were out in the desert, the high desert in Abiquiu, out like so far you can't believe it, in the middle of absolutely nowhere. And I found those beautiful bones, the vertebrae of the cow and everything, and the shells, all of those things I have. Again, I have the wild animals howling, because when I was painting this, I could hear the wolves howling, which I love. I love that sound. It sends a shiver down my back, but I just think it's beautiful. And it has a lot of references from things like it has a paragraph from Carl Jung from a dream he had, a beautiful dream. It has some poetry from W.H. Auden on the bottom that is absolutely insane. Nothing really, if you look separately, you wonder how it all goes together. And I don't even know how it goes together, but in my mind while I'm doing it, it does. Including the songs and the music I'm listening to as well, because these are done at night with the music loudly. So I'm not really intellectually thinking. It's more like instinctual.
Should we think of this as, is this just a generic figure of a woman in the bikini, or is this at all self-referential, this figure?
I have no idea. There's a beautiful piece of poetry. I left it in the original French, but it's from Victor Hugo, and it's something I love. The line in there, maybe it's the title, but it's the line in there called "Her feet were bare, ... So I wrote that in there next to her.
Okay, all right, let's see. And here we go in more of in a monochromatic palette. Tell us about this image.
That is called To Sleep and Death. It's an homage to sleep being the flip side of death. But that was when I was so sleep deprived for about 3 years that I was painting every night till 2 and 3 in the morning. So there's all kinds of references and things in there, and pieces, things that I've read by other people, little echoes of that. A poem I wrote when I was 31 called To Youth and Beauty, I put on there. And one of the thing, some of the things I've collected, but that Raven's Wing, I have the life-size one here in my studio in my curiosity, one of my glass cabinets. So it's kind of all that jumbled in together.
Okay. And this is,
That's called Indigo. And I just love, obviously, the color. I love the word. I love the title. And it's about just all kinds of things about the color indigo and the history of indigo and harvesting it.
Melissa, we talked about your, let's go say, transitioning from being again, academically trained, as you said, tight painter. If we talked about your favorite, today we talked about some of your favorite artists, Wyeth and Homer. This is remarkably fresh. This has a very different feel. I think you've transitioned. This one, you really do go to the other side. This is really, I mean, in terms of, we could talk about this in terms of color field or pure abstraction, pure non-objectivity. How do you feel at this point getting over to the other side of this bridge? This is not the Melissa Barbieri that any of your collectors and people would have known 5 or 10 years ago. That's why it's so exciting. I just want to, if you'd share with us, what does it feel like to be on this side of the bridge?
Well, it feels really good. It feels really good because I've loved everything that I've done, and I will still do different things because I'm always experimenting, but it's really the most fun I've had painting anything. It's the most freedom because it's not planned, it's spontaneous. Total spontaneity and total creativity is, where other paintings might be a little more laborious, a little more work oriented. It's like I don't want to paint, 10,000 whiskers on that guy's face, but I have to do it because it's going to be perfect. And that's great. But this is a lot freer. And the exercise of doing these is thrilling to me because it's all about the music, emptying my mind, and just hunching over that piece of paper on my knees on the floor for hours like a complete nutcase, and having so much fun and being like sapped at the end of the night and just going to bed, just falling into bed asleep because you got a great day's work in.
Okay. And this work is just chock full of iconographic references and symbolic issues. Of course, Melissa, we don't need you to create, to walk us through it. We're not looking at Robert Campin's Marode altarpiece where we're looking at angels and candlesticks, but this has a rich collage effect. So I think our listeners would enjoy getting a sense of how this came together.
Well, Philip, you tell me, because that image of Jesus is a very famous one, I believe, from the 1500s with a crown of thorns. Do you know that one?
I can't tell you exactly which one, but it definitely looks Italian, and it definitely looks.
It's Italian.
It looks 16th century. Yes.
It is.
I can't tell you. It's you lifted it from whether it's a Guercino or whether it's from which altarpiece. I can't tell you, but all right, let's go forward.
I can't remember, but I
All right, the
knew,
crown of thorns, and then you've got the talons here of the, you love these talons. They appear again. And then the Sacred Heart of Jesus. And then, I mean, is this about Eros? Is this about Jesus? Is this about your
this,
own spirituality?
for some reason, I had this, I had to use that image of Christ. I love that. And I'm not sure who I don't even think it was a major artist, but it's definitely from the early Renaissance. So I wanted to do that. I knew I was calling it Eros. And I was reading a lot of Thomas Mann, and I love this whole thing he wrote about Eros is love and lust, but it's also the god of creativity and creative force, where it's the same as lust and physical carnal love. That drive towards it is the same. Eros has the same effect on the creative spirit. So people that are creating, you're creating with the same burning passion that you fall in love with somebody, the same kind of other side of the coin. You're falling in love. You can't wait to be with that person. You have that passion. It's the same thing as like running to your studio and falling into your work and starting painting. So I thought that was fantastic. And then again, being a Catholic and all the dichotomy that goes with that, it just made
Yes,
sense to have Eros, passion, Christ, love, lust, creativity. That's what this is
yes.
all about.
This reminds me of one of the feminist art historian, uh, Camille Paglia. She rhapsodizes about her Catholicism and how she adores these images of the issues on the flailing of Christ, and the images of sort of the duality of pleasure, love and pleasure, going from there to Freud. Um,
Mhm.
and you're really, in a graphic way, you're really counterbalancing that pleasure pain principle here. All right, let's see this. Now we go into the Dark Sea. It's something very, very much part of your repertoire. Uh, there are so many homes between, I think, probably between Greenwich and Nantucket, that have a marvelous Melissa Barbieri shark or aquatic scene. So, how is this one sort of the penultimate images of the Into the Dark Sea with Melissa?
Uh, the quote on the top is from Moby Dick that I love. I absolutely love it. So there was that, and then the circle of sharks, and then I remember the music I was listening to when I did this, and all those millions of little, I don't know what you call them. They look like a cross section of uh, tree cut down. You know, the rings that you see there. I just got
Yes.
so into the flow of that, and taking my pen and going around and putting all these weird words and sayings and things that were in this piece of music I was listening to. So it's really a I don't know, what do you call it? It's a melting pot of all different things that kind of
Mhm,
just come together at the end.
mhm. All right. And really a signature image was used on the invitation for the museum. And really, I think this one really puts much of it together. Spiritus Sanctus. So let's delve into the Spiritus Sanctus here,
That's
Melissa.
a Latin phrase for Holy Spirit, and the writings on there's a lot of reference to Native Americans, and the images on there are things in my collection. The bow and arrow that's 19th century, that was given to me by my Navajo brother-in-law out in New Mexico, from his collection, and the medicine bag pouch, and it's all about all the tiny little writing in there about the medicine man, and how the Native Americans carried their medicine bag, and what was in it and what they burned for rituals, and sweetgrass and sage, and just interesting things about that. The pipe there's a pipe in here that
Yeah.
my aunt's husband lives in Maine. He's this really talented man that is so intellectual, and he makes these beautiful hand carved things. And this is a pipe that he gave to me that he made off his property. It's a deer antler, and it's I think black walnut from his property. And on the top is an Indian nickel, and on the bottom is a buffalo coin. And he gave that to me, and I treasure it. So I
Mhm,
painted that in there too.
mhm. Often when we're looking at contemporary images, we think about the proverbial, the picture plane, and or going back, let's say, begin with Cezanne, of where we are in this push-pull of pictorial or the planar surface, the picture plane. And what is so great in this is the way you have rendered this antique bow and arrow, and then this is so delicate the way you've come in here with this shadow, which is a very realistic shadow, and yet it then almost it resonates and echoes then into this cloud form, this amorphous form. So where is the space here? Or, is there gravity in this painting? Melissa.
Well, it's not your, typical realist painting. It just kind of happens like that. So yeah, you see the shadow and the three-dimensional aspect, and then there's abstract aspects to it too. So I've always been interested too in graphic arts and posters, and I like so many different styles. So it's probably kind of a mix of all of that.
Okay. All right. The snake dance.
Serpentine, I call that. That's
Us.
got a lot of scientific reference in that, as well as all kinds of strange things that I wrote. And that's actually one of my favorite. There's a lot of detail in that. And I do love snakes. My husband is afraid of them, but I love them. I think they're beautiful.
Okay. And is this
This is another represent. This is like a different series, but this is a skull that I brought back from North Dakota, a ram skull.
a ram skull?
Hmm. I
The
don't know why those things to me are like talismans. Like I have them in a collection, and they mean so much to me. And I don't know why. I love things from nature. Little bird nests I have in my collection. I have fossilized
right.
sharks and pieces. I just like that. That kind of is a little touchstone for when I'm starting paintings of the things I want to use in their
Yeah.
elements and things.
But here's the design. Here's the intuitive design where you have this, desert cobra type or rattlesnake. You have a rattlesnake, and then this becomes this beautiful shadow, which you're playing on the antler versus the form. I mean, it's very sinuous. It's very it works in a very rhythmical and a very uh, compositional way. The way it seems to reverberate onto itself.
I like
But
the
let's
serpentine aspect of things.
let's be mindful of the time. We want to get to the chat room and get to some questions. I'm going to ask you one question before we go to the chat screen, and that is, you've mentioned several times that you love to get into this your mode, your zone, and you begin to work maybe after dinner, and then you said you like to listen to music. So, what kind of music are you listening to when you're creating these? What give us a
Sam,
Melissa's two or three greatest hits?
Sam asked me that last time, and I listen to I listen to all kinds of music, but I listen to probably really kind of strange music that maybe a lot of people don't listen to, but I really do. I like opera, I like symphony, I have my things that I go to that I probably won't even say what they are because either people wouldn't know or they would think I was crazy, but I do like a lot of loud raucous music, like alternative rock and roll, from the past, the 80s and 90s, some British bands. So, but
Okay.
I definitely am drawn to like dramatic and melancholy, I guess, a lot. But but music is definitely a very big part of my painting process.
Okay, let's take just a quick pause. I'd like you to know that if you'd like to,
I have to excuse myself for 1 second.
okay, would anyone care to write in a question or ask her directly, and we'll read out your question? We'll take a minute here, see if we get some questions in for Melissa. Caitlin Healy reminds us that you may email her if you'd like a recording of this program, thanks to the good folks at the Lyman Allyn. Terry Clay notes that she finds the work very ethereal. Lines and colors seem to indicate how Melissa's instincts go together. We'll wait for Melissa
Okay,
to come back.
sorry.
Okay, fine. Terry Clay writes, finds your work ethereal. The lines and the colors seem to indicate how your Melissa's instincts go together. You want to comment on that? It all seems to go together with who you are.
Oh, it does. Terry Clee says that. That is, yeah, I guess. I think color is very personal for artists because I know a lot of times I'll see art that someone has done and I love the subject, but I am turned off by the palette. Other times I'll see the palette is beautiful, but it's not my subject. So everyone's different, but like I see you have that orange painting, Philip, in back of you. I love that, but I'm not really usually a very bright colored artist. I use a lot of deep colors and natural colors. Then again, I like white on white and cream on white. So yeah, I think it has to me, it has to go together. I know some artists' palettes maybe are very bright and jarring, and that works for different things. For what I do, it's a little more natural, I guess.
Okay. Sam comes in. Are these works available, or are they so personal that you want to keep them close at hand?
Well, I wanted to keep all my things for the last 35 years, but I can't do that because I have no more room and my husband will kill me. So they will be, yes, they will be available. And I will, people come to my studio and you can really see a lot of things here in my studio up in Essex. So I'm always creating new things, but that will be coming up after the show.
Okay. And let's see. Tanya writes, there are so many powerful, epic themes in this work. Are there other themes that you wish to explore? What's cooking? Give us a preview of what's cooking, what's on the back burner.
Well, I have 5 different series I'm working on. So I'm definitely going to keep going with this series because I have several more pieces, like a lot of pieces that I want to create. I'm doing just began another series called Artists, Poets, Friends, and those are portraits of real loose kind of oil painting that I'm doing. And really, I have things I want to do for all these different 5 series. So I have to kind of rein it in and calm down and focus on one thing like I've been doing at a time. So I'm doing, the ram skull. I'm doing a coyote now and some nature things that I really like really powerful images from life. But then I want to get back into this memories, dreams, archetypes, because I have another 10 or 15 paintings that I want to do for that.
Melissa, you've been very absorptive. You've looked at obviously old master paintings. You've traveled in Europe. Can you share with us what would have been an artist or a painter early in your formation that just made you realize that you had to go from here? You were so inspired.
What do you mean, when I was like a teenager?
Traveling in Europe, traveling and looking at great frescoes and things. What were you?
Well,
almost
because
so inspiring.
I studied that Renaissance art when I was, 13 to 18. The first time I went to a big art museum, I was 13. I went with Frank Covino to the Met and in New York, and we were upstairs, and I saw the Velasquez portrait of is it Juan de Parejo or I forget.
Yes, Juan de Parejo.
I
Yes.
stood in front of that, and it gave me chills down my back, and I couldn't even stand what I was looking at with the brushwork. I was just absolutely blown away. It was lecturing on that painting, so that's when I knew. I mean, I'd already been drawing since I was 3 years old, like constantly. So that's what kind of sparked me in the beginning. I think everybody has some moment when they just say, "That's what I want to do."
I wonder if Cynthia Di Paola is an artist herself, because Cynthia sees that you've had a real major shift to the watercolor and ink. Is it difficult to do the more structured oil works, or do you think it'll be more difficult after the freedom of this loose and the very transparent work on using the
To go back to
aqua,
that.
the water medium?
Uh, no, I know that's a great question, but usually I work on like 3 different things at one time, or like my primary focus will be on one series, which will be this one with the watercolor and ink. But I have like on my easel now this coyote I'm painting, and um, a Comanche Indian that I'm doing portraits of. So when I get really tired of one thing, I jump to another. I usually have about 3 things at a time I'm working on. One
Okay.
more intensive, and then, like more disciplined, and then I go back to the freedom of the other thing.
Okay. Well, look, I want to be very mindful of our time. I want to remind everyone, even in this difficult and very, very challenging COVID period, and we, of course, wish you all the best of health and happiness and safety in the new year. Hopefully, you'll have time to visit the exhibition of Melissa Barbieri. The Lyman Allyn, as Caitlin Healy had mentioned, and she put it on the chat, the Lyman Allyn will reopen on January 15. And so the show continues until January 24. So for those of you who really want to see these, and in scale, you need to see the scale of them. I think the greatest compliment could be, I'm going to take the pleasure of quoting one of our listeners tonight. There's such a wonderful comment, and I think I couldn't think of a more appropriate way to wrap things up tonight. One of our listeners, Francine Sush, I'm sorry, Schuch, Sush, writes, and I think this is for signing off for tonight. She writes, and I hope you all have been equally informed and inspired by what Melissa's been able to share about her processing and her cognitive work. Francine writes, I think it is so amazing that all of your senses are involved and expressed when you paint. Physically on the floor, music, very loud, colors, gifts of the earth and the sea, voices from literary artists. You seem to immerse yourself into your art. What a gift. Thank you. Thank you, Francine, for that sign off. Thank you,
That's
Francine.
beautiful. Thank you guys so much.
To all of you, peace, be well, happy, safe in the new year.
Thank you all. Thank you
Thank
very
you
much.
all. Good night.
Thank you so
Thanks,
much,
Philip.
everybody. Have a great evening. And again, please don't hesitate to reach out if you'd like a recording of tonight's talk. Thank you, Philip. Thank you, Melissa. Good night,
Thank you.
everybody.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Thank you.